Ta-da! And welcome to Josef's Model Railway and Toy Room. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. Just a little bit of housekeeping. You don't need to like, follow, or subscribe to any of the videos I put out there. I just put them out there where I can. Have a holly jolly great time doing so. Well, welcome back, where we are now going to put the finishing touches to our engine shed, locomotive shed. TMD, I can't really accept that term. I think that's a bit too trendy for me, and it's not this great big department, and you can't see lots and lots of sheds on the section I'm modeling. It's pretty much an engine shed, so I'm going to call it that. And when I say we're going to add a few little finishing touches to it, finishing touches for the most part to say this scene is complete. As I've said in many other videos, it's never ever going to be 100% complete. We're always going to keep coming back and revisiting, or we're waiting on something to keep sort of adding and touching up and fine tuning, particularly when we actually have the trains running. So, but for the most part, this is the bit where we're going to just finish up a few bits and pieces, add the figures on, a few other little bits and pieces, and we hopefully have got a bit of a completed scene. Now, on a score out of 10, honestly, I'm not even going to give it a 0. Look, we've turned out with a reasonable result, but this isn't what I had planned in my head, and it's all back to that air clay thing. So don't be surprised in a few years if I decide to rip this section up and start it all over again. Something's not quite the way I want it to be. We'll keep moving further down toward the station end and doing what we need to do there, but something's still not quite right in this scene, and I don't know what it is. But at least we've created something, and as the trains go whizzing by, at least we've got a little bit more of a framed amount of scenery to carry on with. So let's get stuck into it today, shall we? It's mostly just waterway. Oh, hey, sorry. I'm sorry if the screen's not wide enough to fit my great big fat head into it, but it's been pointed out to me by some that perhaps I'm putting on too much weight. And like Tay says, haters are going to hate. So at the end of the day, I'm sorry about that, but that's just the climate I live in. It's winter time. If I look chubbier, I might be chubbier. And when it's the summertime, rest assured, it drops away instantly as I sweat my guts out there in the real world. But to the rest of you, please do enjoy it. I'll do my very best to ensure I try and fit onto your widescreen TVs the best I possibly can. So just a quick recap, bit of piano wire we were putting into that trunking where we put those 3 cabinets, and we just laid down a little bit of the fencing and getting that figure with a dab of the micro mark tacky glue on his feet. That's pretty much where we were at, so let's pick it up in this video, shall we? Let me not bore you with the past 2.5 hours and what is it that I've been up to. Well, I want to get this cutter in for the welder, which I've got a little tiny LED light that I fed through the crack that's fed under, and I've finally just finished wiring, as you can see in this picture, to one of the Goodwood Scenics lighting hubs. Now that we know that works, you may well have noticed in that earlier footage I demolished, well, this was already broken, and because the cables are actually separate, I stole the black leg, which was just what I thought we needed to create the cable just traveling out to these turnout actuators, motors, whatever you want to call them. And that's really good. So I'll leave that further down for the next points as we make our way down. But when it comes to our welder here, we'll get him into position with that light. But to connect himself to the actual welding rig itself, I found this little scrap piece of cable off of a signal that's not being used. It's a little bit thicker than this. It's a little more pliable too, so if I want to give it more of a kink or something, it's more likely to stay into the position we need. So that's where we're going to go next, is get this bit happening. I also noticed a tiny little anomaly that I'm not too worried about fixing just yet. This needs to come down more. The only way to get it down more is probably to get it up and go down. I really don't think we'll worry about that yet. And just diving under the board like I've just said, you can see I had the light set up here, but basically our little penetration is the little hole up there. I just tapped into a splicer plug we trail that around to another plug, which is this one here. It looks a bit untidy, I know. Over the light, and we're in port number 1 on that particular hub. This is a pretty chaotic section, mostly because of the signal gantry directly above us is what's really confusing the areas. There's quite a bit, and isn't it nice that we actually have a few trains down here? Not that you can probably see all that well. That's okay. But as I said, it is nice under here. I do enjoy being under here, and I don't have the lights on down here, but the wiring is quite tidy in general though. Okay, let's see how we go. Apologies, I got someone next door mowing the lawn and a whole bunch of things going on, but I'm about to head off for work for a few days, so I'd love to just get this chap into place. If it just looks a little bit moist around the edges, I did just have to, I didn't film it, but I did just take a blade and I just scribed it because those bits, like I said, aren't quite sitting where I wanted them to. So I just gently scored it with the blade back. Now the good news is that everything runs smoothly. This is more a static sort of section anyway. We're not necessarily bringing things in and out of here, but we do want it to be functional. And once this bit dries, I'm just going to touch back over with a bit more powder. But let's get our person into position here. Now, here we go. I believe I may be using the exact ones as per the picture for inspiration here. Which is from Scale Model Scenery in their catalogue. I did just put a little bit of a brown paint. I didn't have any spray because the brown spray paint does adhere better. I think I used NATO brown, but I don't have any. So we'll just leave it like that. A couple of offcuts of track I've just done there, and it looks actually quite similar to the picture in that sense. Now, the cable we discussed, we have that. So what we're basically going to do, just hold this in for a moment, try and get a bit of a grab going. Want this aside, and we're going to feed the wires down. Now let's take some more of that glue again. I'll just give that a moment to bond if we can while we're waiting. Let's just pop back over to where we put this fence down. What we'll do with these life rings. Just on that residual glue there, just take a bit of Woodland Scenics. Blend it. I got way too much there, but that's okay. Suck that up with a vacuum later on. Still drying down here. That's not going to stop us from getting a little bit of our black weathering powder. Just some of those really, it's just really the bits that I gouged open. There's no concrete now. This is the material we're using for those of you curious. Right, and a little in that edge too, I just noticed. I don't think we're going to get it in. Now, just come back over with our pastel. It's just the black. This will just soften it, unlike the actual weathering powder, which is very strong. This can be manipulated a little better. Good. Taking, this time, not the stiff brush. Just a nice soft one. Most of the excess of this just falls down into that gap there where the track is, which is fantastic because that's what hides us, and we didn't need to paint or do anything there. Never underestimate the powers. Yes, I think painting track is a great idea, but if that's not what you want to do like me, you don't have to, and you can get away with weathering it with the powders and you're going to get a great result. Still waiting on that glue to dry. Picked up a few when we were doing the mast down the other end from Goodwood Scenics. They also happen to do these details for going around the fishing sort of situation. And you know the thing, we've got some cool eskies as we call them, or the cool containers that they fill up with ice and transport everything around. So we're going to unpack a few of those and get those into position now. I think we'll probably use the detail tack again, because if we change our mind, so be it. Also, these came from Scale Model Scenery, I think, and I may be wrong. Originally, they were going to sit next to the shed against the wall. They look like they belong there. I just don't know if that is where they're going to be. So for the minute, I'm going to plonk them in. Let's have a look what we got here. We're not going to need everything. As you can see, I now keep them in a locked box now. We're going to just take our oils again and redo that section of concrete. I think our welder's ready to have to be put together, but we need to correct that oil up a little. Now, there's no right or wrong with any of this. First of all, we're going to take a little bit of white spirit, and I mean literally a drop, although here I am coming in with several there. Rust streaks. Now this is all going to fail epically on me, but basically, told you. Check out the other channels for classy ways of doing things. That's not what you're going to get on this channel. Some fresh engine oil. And a little bit of streaking grime. Sorry, I didn't mean to do the rust. I'll leave that to the side. Once you got what you need, get these locked back up. They'll ruin your drawers. Yes, it is a great track, and I don't want to interrupt it, but just taking a little bit of black paint and sort of creating that lead into what he's going to be holding here, feeding the cords where they need to be, and trying to sculpt this other fake piece of cable to the unit itself. Bit of back and forth here, but let's get back to some good tunes. I didn't fluff around with all these camera angles trying to capture this kind of gear. I didn't fluff around with all these. Getting the phone or the camera in the right place for these shots. This model would have been finished years ago. Can't work backwards, I can't find my tweezers. You're just gonna have to get hopefully this next bit should be a little smoother.
That's looking very good. We'll come back and have a peep at that with a before and after. But now, after just having these little bits and pieces from Goodwood Scenics, I obviously just blobbed a bit of the Micro Mark tacky glue on them and left them to dry for a few days, and they can be moved wherever it seems right. So we're just going to take a few and put them on. I think they need a bit of wash over them or something, but for the minute we'll just plonk them on here. If there's too many or not enough, it doesn't matter. We're getting a bit of a scene. Let's see how we carry on.
So you'll recall we have this pallet. We were painting the pallets up back when we were doing Percival's Landing. Take a wander over here. You'll notice we have some scattered about the place. So I thought the best place for this one would probably be here or thereabouts. I think that one looks quite nice.
And here's Fred Dinbar. I don't know why I put a hammer in his hand when he comes with a spanner. We might go back and correct that one up.
Right, we've got a crane we still need to put in here. Whoops.
Yes, this is why you tune into my channel. Like at a good NASCAR race or something like that, there's always a quality accident to be had. Good old whoopsie daisy. Let's drop that trawler quickly you saw in there. And that's just making sure we've got clearance where I want everything to be.
That's exactly what I needed before. Yeah, look at that. That's pretty good. We'll get them in. Get those baskets out the way. Fishermen, you need to start cleaning up a bit. And you can probably see all I've just done here is just lop these off at a 45-degree angle. I'm not actually going to, I'd usually just bleed a little bit of something into it. Brush some powder onto it. All right, let's get a little bit of glue. Oh, that's not helping at all. All right, we'll come back on that crane for a minute. I need a bit more glue. But I need those tweezers back. It doesn't really matter where I put my big cumbersome hands, they always knock something over. So again, I just decant some PVA onto a little bit of parchment or baking paper. Make sure you've got it on the right side, because it's supposed to be here. And just using a pin or something like that, just get you a few blobs where you need them to be. We don't really need much here at all. Just because of where it is, I'm going to need to weight it off with... Oh! Need to get some weight on that. That will do. Okay. Let's get the other crane back up again on its foot. And this time I'll put the tweezers down, weight it down, and I'm going to walk away this time. Let's hit stop right there.
Okay, this is looking reasonably plausible. Forgive some of the green stuff. I still got a vacuum around it, but two cranes there into place. That one just drying. Now we're just going to come in with a few of the pastels again. And you see I'm dropping them into the tracks, but it's not really working. So
I'm going to take this dark grey, basically a black really. And you can see this is probably going to be an utter disaster, but you'll get what I'm doing here. Many of you can see what I'm up to here.
So taking that blade again, let's just trim down a few pastels, your greys, your blacks, a little smidge of brown and the sort of rust kind of colour. And
so in this application, what we're basically getting the wash to do is act a little bit like a glue. It's loose enough that it can slide down into where we need to just touch the bottom of the rail. And those sleeper or the tie joints, just little by little is usually better because this stuff dries very fast. Again, in the container, which you can't quite see, but we're literally just going to take a little piece of our black
pastel, add a little bit of grey, and I usually just throw in a little bit of the some sort of a brown or something, weathering powder or some sort of a pigmentation, something that's going to just make this all last a little bit longer. As you can probably see by the picture, you got your ground black and that little bit of red. We'll just mix it up. See what we're trying to get that reaction exactly. And once we've got a little something, it doesn't have to be mixed that well together. Just tap, 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 tap till you got that nice powder coming down into the bottom. And then just where you've just wet it, just start depositing. Heap it on, it's not too bad. Pastels are a lot more forgiving than the actual weathering powders. Wherever you've just put down that now rather sparingly, just guide it with your brush into that gap. If you just do it lightly, you're not going to really mark your existing concrete. I mean, there's bound to be some. See that brown is starting to come off a bit more. I can touch the top over with a bit of grey, and as more keeps falling down into this section, it just builds up what I want down in the gap of the rail there. I need to get some grey back on that, I can see. I can get that on the top easily, but at least we start to fill in that in the bottom there. It's not looking so silvery, striking us straight back on the eye again. Oh yes, there's too much red. And you do want to get the top of the tracks looking a little clean again, so I just take a toothpick or any piece of scrap timber lying around.
Well, we better start wrapping this up or it's getting a bit too big. We've got two more things to do, but first of all, let's talk about this, ground frame lever assemblies. Now, as I mentioned, I'm focusing the layout at a time when it's going from manual signal boxes and point operation to the automation with the electrified signals. We've got the GSM mast, we've got things like that going on. However, in its day though, down near the shed where we're working, I like to think, and this is the Bachmann Scenecraft ground frame kit, I've had it sitting around for a while and I always wanted to have it sitting somewhere here. All we're going to do today, I've decided I was going to mount it running the other way, that it would be running parallel with the tracks, but I've decided to turn it around, and I think this is a neutral location. Also, specifically where that point is, there would have been a lever directly moving it back and forth and the others doing the other 2 points respectively in the area. Now we're going to detail that up and get some rodding and things around it, but at the moment we're just going to glue it in, and that's pretty much as far down as the line as we're going to travel in this one.
So just really quickly, I've gone back looking at it and I'm not 100% happy with this. The contrast is just a bit too striking. So like I said, there are only a few little things before we're done with the scene. This is one of them. So it's the Vallejo light grey. So you'll always see me using the light grey and the dark grey respectively. It doesn't really matter. Usually I'm using the darker one. I get a better thing and I can quickly water it down. So if you had to just buy one bottle, do it. I'm always banging on about this stuff, but it's just wonderful. So we just pour a little bit out and we're going to just decant it. Just use a brush. Now never overthink this, but basically watch what happens as we start to brush this over. Now, I'll just take my finger and just wipe off that excess, which is going to dry anyway. But you can basically see what's going on here. Is all of a sudden we've brought out where we would see that detail in those little gaps and joints. And basically shadows, I suppose, is more than anything. I mean, with the marine type of stuff, this kind of thing is always getting constantly hosed down. We're not trying to make it look dirty per se. Really, all we're trying to do here is just bring that definition. I know I hate using that word all the time, but really it's kind of what you're doing here is you're just adding depth to that image. So just glide it along, and as it'll dry off, you'll see what happens. It doesn't have to be everywhere.
worry too much. Again, and also don't worry if you go a bit heavy and make it look like a bit of a mess, because it does literally just clean off with a bit of water. And I know it's heartbreaking for a lot of people, especially with brand new locomotives. I mean, you love that beautiful pristine color, and I do too, but I must admit, I've certainly got a little bit more of a taste for the weathering now. It really, when you're trying to create a scene, don't get me wrong, there's a time and a place for doing all of these little details. But I really think you start to get an appreciation of just how much this little magic bottle can do for you. The crab pots, I did actually just brush a little bit of, I think it was like a rust or something on it, just to give it that, you know what, we'll just brush a bit more on here. Won't hurt. And there we go. That just takes that shine off of those eskies or coolers. Some behind the scenes here I'll quickly just fix up. And it's really just a light coat. We literally have only used 3 drops. And I think it's enough that you can see how you quickly brought out that separation there. I mean, when it was just white, you didn't even probably know there were 2 lines there wrapping around for giving it the shape. And I really think, in particular as it falls into the footing of it down there, that's just really softens the scene up and gives it that real natural sort of a look, no matter the lighting conditions. This was the anchor we were doing that we had sitting on a resistor here, which we just textured up a little bit. I don't have any home for this anchor just yet, other than it's ready to go. I'll sit it here and I think we'll just put a bit of tack on it, and that should be that. I've got another one here too. I think we might do something with these later, because we're still going to need to do this half, which is still semi under construction, but it'll start forming up. So I removed the bowling alley. I don't think we need it getting damaged while we're under construction at the moment. Now, just a little fan heater, not with the heat on, just for the fan to get some promotion to make sure that this is now nice and dry. So let's move to the next step now. Right, for this next bit, we're going to need a really, really, really good clean with the vacuum cleaner now. Try to make sure you're not going to suck up any loose things. Well, it's been about 2-3 months, and you can see I've certainly got a bit of shrinkage up on where we're going to lay down a bit of these puddles, so to speak. So let's carry on now, shall we? And we're going to be going back to our realistic water. I probably only now have about, I don't know if you can see it in the bottle, but there's really only about 5 ml left in there, 5 to 10 ml if that. But we are going to use a little bit of olive drab. We're going to just mix it up into this cup and just take the eyedropper and bleed it on. So hopefully we've got a good undercoat now, and it's really only about giving it that sort of texture to it. Now everything is definitely not working in our favor with this process. That container's going to probably be too big, probably just enough to clean up a few puddles in the future if I need it. But we've done pretty well. Going to use this olive drab for this one. With the other puddles, we've just used realistic water and just sort of let it bleed into the landscape accordingly. And there'd be no problem with doing that right now, but I thought we'd just try and add a little bit more texture to this spot here. Remember to just stir the product. You do not want to shake this product. And then anything you've got, if you like, just cover up your big areas just for the dust and things like that. That's not really a problem for me. So we're just going to sit it on that big bit. The rest is just absolutely fine. And as for that fly you could hear buzzing around, well, if he ends up dying in some of this stuff, well, that'll be quite the archaeological dig site we're going to have to turn into, I think. We'll call it aliens. Well, that's easily been 24 hours, so it's not too bad. Little bit of shrinkage. That's why I left the bobble on the top. That's not too bad. I reckon it could still dry a little more than that. We can still bring up a little more texture and grass around it. But for the minute, I think that'll do just fine. So let's get a couple of little finishing touches here and let's wrap it up. Now, here's our figure here. We'll call him Fred Dinbar. He liked to muck around with steam trains, didn't he? Oh, well, steam traction locomotives. I did put a bit of silver on that hammer, and so far he just has a little bit of the tacky on him. And really, because I don't have a place for him specifically, I'm going to have him sitting right in on that shed bit. And we can always sort this out later when we get some trains in there. We'll obviously pose that into position. The last thing we've got was just a little forklift. We'll just put this here. I don't actually have anywhere for it just at the moment. I suppose it would look actually quite good down the back there, but it doesn't really matter. We've just got this little forklift we're going to add. And I do want to make some attention that we have other sort of trackside workers, and I've got an engineer with an oil can that would be sitting there. But just for the minute, as we're still doing things, I'm not going to put them out just yet. Oh, maybe I will. Now, while this is definitely a HO scale forklift, this Artitech brand I'm really a big fan of. I've bought a few of these bits and pieces, and even though, yeah, it's not quite the scale I want, of course, it's the 1:87 instead of the 1:76, the build quality, the price, the overall finish, it really is ready to go. It's fantastic stuff. Now, I don't really have a spot for this at the moment. I actually always envisioned it would probably sit somewhere. Well, I think that's about all we're going to do for today. Let's get in with some final shots and see what we can do. You can certainly see that sizing difference, hence why I think this forklift would look better off to the side here. It's not framed up, because against the locomotive, that just looks a bit wrong. Yep. Looks good. Well, let's get these shots and show you what it's all about. As we come to the end now, we're just going to do something a little bit different than what we usually do, where I sort of show the polished piece of what I've ended up creating and where we are, and play a little bit of lovely music and all the rest of it. We'll have some lovely music, I'm sure. But I thought what we might do is, here are my original concept pictures that inspired me to try and feature all these different key bits in. So basically, here's what I want to try and do. Here will be the original picture with what I was trying to chase, and here's my interpretation of it as found in this scene at the moment. So let's have a look and see what we've ended up with on this final shot. Let's get started now. Check out that grease and grime around the bottom of the track work. So yes, as you could see, I tried to build some of that up. I did actually do a lot of streaking grime and oils down the side, but it sort of got lost. We may come back again and just put a little engine there just to give it a little bit of a contrast to what you're seeing in that one. Check out the edges of the track here, heavily built up there. And also the little sand that was used on the areas there for where the drips would happen. I actually carved a little bit out off to the side where the siding was because, well, I didn't quite cut it straight. But I think you kind of get the idea. I sort of ticked a little box there where I could and built it up a little bit with the different textures there. Once again, we just come close in down the bottom to where the track work is, and we're just sort of looking at that really sort of dark black, and here we've got that little raised section as well, and just a little bit of green, but pretty much, you know, that burnt out bit. But this bit particular, the forklift and the yellow line, so as you can see running down the edge of the red cabinet there is my yellow line that we of course textured up, and I really think that that makes a big difference. We also did pop a forklift in. It is a Heister, a HO one, but I think it'll do just fine. And that's why I didn't leave it near the locomotive. The detail's superb. We've got the yellow line. I've just put it there. You can see how it's not quite right, but so moving on into the engine sheds now, and it's sort of the typical thing you expect. My favourite shot you're going to see tonight is this one, and mostly I was just worrying about the stuff you see around the edges. We've got the black we needed, but around the edges of the shed there's always just
oil tanks, and there's different stillages and things holding stuff. So as you can see here quite clearly, the eskies and the things there, but doing what we can around the edges of the shed. We need a bit of detail. I'm sure we're going to have more as I get around to it. I didn't even put that spanner down now I think about it, but there is getting up to the locomotive maintenance thing. The puddle. We absolutely needed a puddle, and here we go. Here is the puddle. We may come back and further give it a bit more detail, but I do have a puddle that is just the realistic water. I love this shot, the reflection of the light off the puddle there, which again, when you turn my lights on, we've got that beautiful reflection, which is what it was all about there. And of course, we've got here we can see the concreting, straight edges of where they've poured it. They're never exactly necessarily lining up per se, but we've just tried to create expansion joints that try to sort of keep in flow with where they were pouring, because different slabs at different times. Of course, the oil drops there at the edge of the track and someone working on a locomotive. This figure could be put with anyone. I think it's a default one. It looks absolutely perfect. We'll move that as needed. I popped someone in the shed there. That was just to hide a bit of the electrical work, but really, I think the person looks absolutely fine. Here we're looking at basically the dirt and the sand at the side, how it textures up from coming off a few bits of coal and the more gritty and the grime, and then goes back to your regular type of browner type of soil. And that's sort of what we've been working on. And I'm not too disappointed with how it turned out there. And the inside of that track bit where we've tried to sort of texture it up a little bit. It just gives a little more where the sleepers are really starting to get embedded in at this point. As we carry on now, again, back to the concrete, little bits of green that come around, and that's exactly what we've gotten up to here. We're not quite finished here. Expect some more tufts and a bit more, but until I keep moving a little bit further down the line, so be it. The yellow safety fencing, of course, we must have, and there's that little raised section that we did create. I think that's a good shot as well from the concrete, looking back over into the shed. Again, a little bit of water coming in from a steam locomotive. Again, we just focused back on that existing water that was there, and a few little extra puddles down the side. I absolutely love this. Expect some of those signs there where they put them up. I'll still come back and put a few extra signs up and give it more detail. At the moment, we won't worry about that till we're doing a bit more signage on what we need, but I think really we're starting to get that. Now this overhead shot, we still need to finish texturing the tracks, but as you can see on the left and right were the bits where people are obviously starting to constantly walk over. Beautiful shot here, and once again we're just looking at a few yards with the typical grime and textures that build up. That telehandler you can see off to the right is something I'm still trying to sort out. We'll come back to that, but again, just textures around the bottom of the track where you're going from the dirt to the coal to the built up grime and muck that sort of is what you'd expect from the oil and diesel that's just deposited around the bottom of the track. And here particularly you can really see it's not as heavy in the siding. Once again, a nice puddle section. We've just got the dirt building up around the edges, and that's what I'm trying to show you in this particular picture here. Just sort of, we're trying to create that seamless look. And even over on the other side, we haven't finished this side, but you can see we've got the boardwalk, we've got the concrete, we've got the dirt. This bit here, we will come back. I still want to get some, I think we'll come in with more pedestrian crossing and look at the rotting there, and we're paying attention to that because while I did lay the ground frame lever assembly down for those points, I really think I'm going to come back, and you can see it's still lifted there. So I think we'll raise and put a bit more sort of rotting and detail as we come in and finish that section up. But this looks good in the spot it's in, and we'll come back to that. Just a typical kind of buffer in there, and you can see we put two in, and that's where we modified them with the lanterns on. But they look quite good, and even though I had to modify them a bit, I think we've got a bit of a pass. Back to the lever frame there, I'm not quite sure why. There's the lantern on top of that end buffer from the shed. Yard lights and the overall spectrum shot of this. My yard lights there, which you can see on the left, and swooping down to the overall shot of what we've captured here, and I don't think it's really all that bad. My piece de resistance, or however you pronounce it, trying to recreate the scene from scale model scenery. I think we did pretty well. That is the exact figure, and that is the exact piece of welding equipment. And of course, we did thread in that warm white micro LED, LITS LED. I think we've got something that looks a bit plausible. I'm really happy with this. It's very tight against the cabinet work, so I can't really get a great picture, but this really is perfect. The way, and just the right amount of glow I was expecting to. In fact, just in a shot you're about to see here, we may well see the flares of the light. But a few other parting shots here. And really, I think the first time I've ever gone backwards. I usually show you the original shots of what I'm working on and we work on it. So this is something a little different, but I hope you enjoyed.
Well, girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me in this whole process of what we've been up to here. Like I said, not 100%, but look, I think it is something, and from where I'm looking, at least it's completing a bit more of the scenery. And until we've got that back section sorted, that's probably what will frame it all together. And, you know, it's all the little things that are going to add up with what we're doing here. Where to from here? Well, we're starting a whole new project somewhere down the other end. But as always, please do stay safe. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll look forward to seeing you in that next one. Toodles!